The letter crumpled in Abigail Montgomery's trembling hands as the stagecoach rattled toward Silver Creek, Wyoming territory. 1876 was supposed to be her year of new beginnings, not another humiliation. Regretfully, we must inform you that Mr. William Peterson has withdrawn his proposal of marriage, the letter read. The third rejection in as many months for a woman who had become known among the marriage brokers of Boston as the mail-order bride no one wanted. The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside Silver Creek's lone hotel, a weathered two-story building that seemed to sag under the weight of Wyoming's endless sky. Abigail straightened her plain gray traveling dress, adjusted her bonnet, and gathered her courage along with her single trunk of possessions. "Last stop, miss," the driver called, not unkindly. "Silver Creek." Abigail stepped down into 6 inches of mud, the spring thaw turning the main street into a treacherous bog. A few curious onlookers watched from the boardwalk as she struggled with her trunk. "Need some help there, madam?" A deep voice spoke from behind her. She turned to find herself face to face with a tall man whose features were partially hidden beneath the shadow of his worn Stetson. His eyes, a startling blue against his sun-weathered skin, met hers with unexpected warmth. "I can manage, thank you," she replied automatically, the response of a woman who had learned that accepting help often came with unwelcome expectations. The man smiled, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "I'm certain you can, Miss Montgomery, but your trunk might disagree." Abigail froze. "How do you know my name? Word travels fast in small towns." He tipped his hat. "Henry Irwin. I own the Double Circle Ranch outside town." He lifted her trunk with ease. "Let me help you to the hotel, at least." Something about his steady gaze made her nod her assent. As they walked toward the hotel, she felt the weight of stares from the townsfolk who had gathered along the boardwalk. "Is she the one?" a woman whispered, not quietly enough. "Third time's not the charm, I reckon." Another replied with a barely concealed laugh. Henry's jaw tightened, but he said nothing as he escorted her into the hotel lobby. "Room for Miss Montgomery," he told the clerk, who eyed Abigail with undisguised curiosity. "We've been expecting you, miss," the clerk said with a smirk. "Though most folks thought you might not show up after Mr. Peterson's change of heart." Abigail lifted her chin. "My arrangements with Mr. Peterson are my own concern." "Of course, miss." The clerk handed her a key. "Room 4, top of the stairs." Henry carried her trunk up and set it down gently inside the small but clean room. "Miss Montgomery," he said, hesitating at the door. "Silver Creek can be unwelcoming to strangers, but not everyone here judges so quickly." "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Irwin, but I've grown accustomed to judgment." She offered a tight smile. "I'll be returning east as soon as I can arrange passage." Henry studied her for a moment. "Perhaps Wyoming might surprise you if you gave it a chance." After he left, Abigail sank onto the narrow bed and allowed herself a moment of despair. At 26, she was considered firmly on the shelf in Boston society. After her father's death had left her penniless, becoming a mail-order bride had seemed her only option. But 3 prospective husbands had rejected her. The first after seeing her photograph, claiming she was too plain. The second after exchanging letters, deciding she was too educated. And now William Peterson, who hadn't even waited for her arrival before finding someone more suitable. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. A young woman with a kind face stood there, holding a tray with tea and sandwiches. "Thought you might be hungry after your journey. I'm Clara, the hotel owner's daughter." "That's very kind, thank you." Abigail accepted the tray gratefully. Clara lingered in the doorway. "Is it true what they're saying? That you came all this way to marry William Peterson and he jilted you?" Abigail sighed. News certainly travels quickly here. It's not right what he did, Clara said firmly, especially since she stopped herself. Since what? Abigail asked. Clara bit her lip. It's not my place to say, but Mr. Peterson has something of a reputation for changing his mind about brides. You're not the first. Abigail felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. I see. Don't you worry about him. There are plenty of good men in Silver Creek. Clara's eyes twinkled. Henry Irwin, for instance. He's the most respected rancher in these parts. Mr. Irwin was simply being polite, Abigail replied, though she couldn't help remembering the warmth in those blue eyes. Henry's never carried a lady's trunk before, not that I've seen. Clara smiled knowingly. Rest now. Things often look different in the morning. But morning brought only more whispers and stares as Abigail made her way to the general store to inquire about eastbound stage tickets. The shopkeeper, a heavy-set man with suspicious eyes, informed her that the next stage wouldn't depart for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Abigail's heart sank. Spring makes the roads treacherous, miss. You're lucky you got here when you did. As she turned to leave, a group of women by the fabric counter fell silent, watching her with undisguised curiosity. Miss Montgomery. One of them stepped forward, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a formidable bearing. I'm Martha Wilson, president of the Silver Creek Ladies' Aid Society. We were expecting to welcome you as Mrs. Peterson. I'm afraid Mr. Peterson had a change of heart, Abigail replied, struggling to maintain her dignity. Martha sniffed. Not surprising. You're rather older than his usual preference. Abigail felt her face flush. If you'll excuse me. Outside, she took deep breaths of the crisp spring air, fighting back tears of frustration. She nearly collided with Henry Irwin, who was tying his horse outside the store. Miss Montgomery. His smile faded as he noticed her distress. Are you all right? Perfectly fine, thank you. She attempted to move past him. He gently caught her arm. You're shaking. It seems I'm stranded here for 3 weeks. She couldn't keep the despair from her voice. And I've already provided the town with enough gossip to last a year. Henry frowned. Martha Wilson's been at you, hasn't she? How did you? That woman could make a saint weep. He looked thoughtful. Miss Montgomery, I might have a proposition for you. Abigail stiffened. Mr. Irwin. Not that kind of proposition, he said quickly, his cheeks reddening beneath his tan. My housekeeper left last month to care for her ailing mother. I need someone to help manage the house until I can find a permanent replacement. It would give you a place away from town gossip and honest work while you wait for the stage. Abigail hesitated. I've never been a housekeeper. Can you cook? Yes, but better than I can, I'd wager. And you'd have your own cabin, the old foreman's place. Complete privacy and respect, I promise. She studied his face, looking for signs of deception but finding only sincerity. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Something flickered in his eyes, a moment of uncertainty, quickly masked. Let's just say I know what it's like to be judged unfairly. 2 days later, Abigail found herself riding beside Henry in his wagon, heading toward the Double Circle Ranch. They traveled in companionable silence for much of the journey, the vast Wyoming landscape unfolding before them, rolling grasslands punctuated by distant mountains, still capped with snow. It's beautiful, Abigail admitted, breathing in the clean scent of sage and pine. Different from Boston, I imagine. Very. Everything there feels confined, she smiled. Though I never thought I'd miss cobblestone streets quite so much. Your roads leave something to be desired. Henry laughed, a rich, pleasant sound. We're almost there, see that line of cottonwoods? They mark the creek that runs through my property. The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise, a sturdy 2-story house with a wide porch, surrounded by various outbuildings and corrals. Several cowboys paused in their work to watch the wagon approach. "Boys, this is Miss Montgomery," Henry called as they pulled up. "She'll be taking over the housekeeping for a spell." The men nodded respectfully, though Abigail caught a few exchanging curious glances. "Don't mind them," Henry said quietly as he helped her down. "They're just surprised to see a lady out here." The foreman's cabin proved to be a snug, one-room structure with a small stove, a narrow bed, and a table with 2 chairs. Though simple, it was clean and solid with a window that looked out toward the main house. "It's not what you're used to, I'm sure," Henry said, setting down her trunk. "It's perfect," Abigail replied honestly. After the hostile atmosphere in town, the cabin felt like a sanctuary. The next morning, Abigail rose early to begin her duties. The ranch house kitchen was well equipped but showed signs of bachelor neglect. She rolled up her sleeves and set to work, finding unexpected satisfaction in bringing order to chaos. By the time Henry came in for breakfast, she had prepared a substantial meal of hot cakes, eggs, and bacon. "Good Lord," he said, staring at the laden table. "I was going to be happy with coffee and biscuits." "I thought you might be hungry after your morning chores." She hesitated. "Is it too much?" "It's perfect," he said, echoing her words from the previous day. "Would you join me?" "There's plenty." They fell into an easy routine over the next few days. Abigail would prepare meals, clean the house, and mend clothing, while Henry tended to ranch business. In the evenings, they often sat on the porch, talking as the sun set over the distant mountains. Abigail learned that Henry had come west as a young man, working his way up from cowhand to ranch owner through determination and hard work. He spoke with pride about his cattle operation, but admitted to occasional loneliness. "A man needs more than work to fill his days," he confessed one evening, his eyes on the horizon. "Why haven't you married?" Abigail asked, then blushed at her boldness. Henry was quiet for a long moment. "I came close once. Elizabeth was her name. Daughter of a Denver banker who summered in these parts. We courted for 2 seasons, but in the end..." He shrugged. "She couldn't imagine life out here permanently. Can't say I blame her. I think it takes a special kind of courage to build a life in a place like this," Abigail said softly. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a moment of recognition, of possibility before Henry cleared his throat and changed the subject. On her 10th day at the ranch, Abigail was hanging laundry when she noticed a cloud of dust approaching from the direction of town. As it drew closer, she recognized Martha Wilson and 2 other women from the Ladies' Aid Society in a smart buggy. Henry emerged from the barn, frowning. "Trouble," he muttered, coming to stand beside Abigail. Martha pulled up, surveying the scene with disapproving eyes. "Mr. Irwin, we've come to speak with you about a matter of community concern." "Mrs. Wilson," Henry replied evenly. "What brings you all the way out here?" Martha's gaze shifted to Abigail. "We've heard that you've taken in Miss Montgomery, alone, without proper chaperonage." "Miss Montgomery is my housekeeper," Henry said firmly. "So you say." Martha sniffed. "But surely you understand how this appears. A single woman living on the property of an unmarried man, it's scandalous." Abigail stepped forward. "Mrs. Wilson, I assure you, your assurances mean little, Miss Montgomery, given your circumstances." Martha's tone was cutting. "A woman who came west as a mail-order bride, only to be rejected 3 times, now living with a bachelor. The conclusion draws itself." Henry's expression darkened. "That's enough, Martha. Miss Montgomery is a lady of impeccable character who has been treated abominably by this town. I won't have you or anyone else adding to her distress. We're simply concerned about the moral fabric of our community," Martha persisted. "Either Miss Montgomery returns to town under proper supervision, or there will be consequences for both of you." The church board, the Cattlemen's Association, they all value decency, Mr. Irwin. After the women departed, Abigail paced the kitchen, distressed. I should return to town. I won't be the cause of trouble for you. Absolutely not, Henry replied, his jaw set stubbornly. Martha Wilson doesn't dictate how I run my ranch or my life, but your reputation is sturdy enough to weather a little gossip. He took her hands in his. Abigail, please stay. At least until your stage leaves. The warmth of his hands and the sincerity in his eyes made her heart race. Henry, a shout from outside interrupted them. One of the ranch hands burst into the kitchen, his face urgent. Boss. Riders coming in fast, looks like Peterson and his boys, and they're armed. Henry cursed under his breath. Get inside and bar the door, he told Abigail. Don't come out until I call for you. From the window, Abigail watched as William Peterson and 3 rough-looking men rode into the yard. Peterson dismounted, his hand resting ostentatiously on his pistol. Irwin, he shouted. Send out my bride. Henry stood his ground, his own ranch hands gathering behind him. She's not your bride, Peterson. You made that clear when you rejected her before she even arrived. Changed my mind. Peterson swayed slightly, clearly drunk. Martha Wilson says you've been keeping her out here, ruining her. Damaged goods or not, she came out here contracted to me. Abigail's blood boiled at his words. Before she could think better of it, she unbarred the door and stepped onto the porch. Mr. Peterson, she called, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I am not, nor will I ever be your bride. Our arrangement was terminated by your own letter. Peterson sneered. A woman in your position can't afford to be choosy. 3 rejections. You're lucky I'm willing to take you at all. I'm not taking her reputation. Henry's voice was like steel. You're drunk, Peterson. Go home before someone gets hurt. Not without what's mine. Peterson drew his pistol, aiming unsteadily at Henry. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Abigail screamed a warning as Peterson fired, the shot going wide. Henry's foreman tackled Peterson from behind while the ranch hands disarmed his companions. Henry strode forward and wrenched the gun from Peterson's hand. You're finished in Silver Creek, he said, his voice deadly quiet. If you ever come near Miss Montgomery again, you'll answer to me, and I won't be as forgiving next time. After Peterson and his men had been sent packing, Abigail sat trembling on the porch steps. Henry settled beside her, his shoulder touching hers. Are you all right? He asked gently. I should be asking you that. He could have killed you. William Peterson couldn't hit the broad side of a barn even when sober. Henry smiled but then grew serious. Abigail, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have said when you first arrived. She looked at him questioningly. I knew who you were before you stepped off that stagecoach. He took a deep breath. We've corresponded before. Abigail stared at him in confusion. What do you mean? 2 years ago, I wrote to a marriage broker in Boston. I was matched with a woman whose letters captivated me, intelligence, kindness, and a quiet strength shining through every word. His eyes held hers. It was you, Abigail. We exchanged 3 letters before I received a note saying you'd chosen another match. Realization dawned. Henry Irwin. H.I. She shook her head in disbelief. But I never withdrew. I was told you had found someone more suitable. It seems we were both misled. He ran a hand through his hair. When I heard your name mentioned as Peterson's intended bride, I couldn't believe it. I had to see for myself if you were the same woman who'd written those letters that I've kept all this time. You kept my letters, he nodded, in the desk drawer in my study. I read them sometimes, wondering about the woman who wrote them. Why didn't you tell me when I arrived? You were hurt, humiliated. The last thing you needed was another complication. He took her hand. And I was afraid you wouldn't remember me, or worse, that you wouldn't care. Abigail's mind raced back to those letters, the correspondence that had given her such hope before it ended abruptly. She had grieved that loss, the connection to a man who had seemed to understand her so completely through mere words on paper. "I cared," she whispered. "I cared very much." The next morning, Abigail rose early and walked to the creek. The water sparkled in the dawn light as she tried to make sense of her conflicted feelings. Henry's revelation had upended everything she thought she knew about her time in Wyoming. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Henry approaching, his expression uncertain. "I've been thinking about what you told me," she said before he could speak. "About our letters. I shouldn't have kept it from you." He stood beside her, watching the water. "I thought I was protecting you, but perhaps I was really protecting myself." "From what?" "From hoping too much." His voice was quiet. "When I saw you step off that stagecoach, it was like seeing a ghost, the woman I'd imagined from those letters, standing before me in flesh and blood." Abigail turned to face him fully. "I remember writing to you about my dreams for a life beyond Boston's drawing rooms, about wanting purpose, partnership. And I wrote about building something lasting in this wild country, something to pass down to children someday." His eyes met hers. "Abigail, the stage leaves for the East in 4 days. I won't stop you if that's what you truly want, but I'm asking you to consider staying." "As your housekeeper?" she asked, her heart pounding. "No." He took her hands in his. "As my wife. The woman I've been waiting for, even when I thought I'd lost her." Abigail's breath caught. "Henry, we barely know each other, don't we?" His smile was gentle. "We've shared meals and conversations. You've seen my home, met my men. I've watched you face downtown gossips and stand your ground against Peterson. And before all that, we bared our souls in those letters." He was right, she realized. In many ways, she knew Henry Irwin better than any man she'd ever met. She knew his dreams, his principles, his kindness. "I'm still the same woman who was rejected 3 times, she said softly. "The mail-order bride no one wanted." Henry shook his head firmly. "You've been mine all along, Abigail. We just got separated for a while." 3 days later, Abigail stood in Clara's room at the hotel, where the young woman was helping her prepare for her wedding. The simple white dress they'd found at the general store had been hastily altered, and Clara had woven wildflowers into Abigail's hair. "You look beautiful," Clara said, stepping back to admire her work. "Henry won't know what hit him." "I still can't believe this is happening." Abigail smoothed the dress nervously. "A month ago, I was arriving in Silver Creek as a rejected bride. Now I'm marrying the most respected rancher in the territory." "It's like something from a storybook," Clara agreed, "especially after the way Martha Wilson and her cronies have had to eat their words." The news that Henry and Abigail had been corresponding long before she came to Wyoming had spread quickly through town, transforming the narrative from scandal to romance overnight. Even Martha Wilson had been forced to acknowledge that their reunion had an element of destiny about it. The small church was filled with ranch hands, townspeople, and a few of Henry's neighboring ranchers when Abigail walked down the aisle. Henry waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving hers, his smile so bright it seemed to light the room. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of 2 souls who found each other against all odds." As they exchanged vows, Abigail felt the last of her doubts melting away. This was no desperate arrangement born of necessity, but a choice made with clear eyes and full hearts. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Henry's kiss was gentle yet filled with promise, sealing their commitment before God and the community that would now be Abigail's home. The celebration afterward was held at the double circle, the ranch hands having decorated the yard with lanterns and wildflowers. As twilight fell, Henry led Abigail away from the festivities to the edge of the property, where the land dropped away to reveal a vista of the valley below. "Welcome home, Mrs. Irwin," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "It's magnificent," she breathed, leaning back against him. "I never imagined I could feel so, belonging somewhere. I have something for you." Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package wrapped in tissue paper. Inside, Abigail found the 3 letters she had written to him 2 years before, carefully preserved despite their yellowing edges. "You really did keep them," she whispered, touching the familiar handwriting. "They were all I had of you." He turned her to face him. "But now I have all of you, and they're just the beginning of our story. A story no one would believe if they heard it." She smiled up at him. "The rejected mail-order bride who found her true match in the end." "Not rejected," Henry corrected, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Just redirected to where you were always meant to be." As the stars appeared overhead and the sounds of celebration drifted up from the ranch, Abigail knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, not as the bride no one wanted, but as the woman Henry Irwin had been waiting for all along. 5 years later, Abigail stood on the porch of the Double Circle Ranch house, watching as Henry taught their 4-year-old son James to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter Emma clutched at her skirts, giggling as her brother wobbled precariously before finding his balance. "Mama, look," James called proudly. "I'm a real cowboy now." "You certainly are," Abigail called back, her heart swelling with love for her family. The ranch had prospered under their joint stewardship. Abigail's Eastern education had proven valuable in keeping the books and corresponding with cattle buyers, while Henry's ranching expertise had expanded their herds and improved their breeding stock. The Double Circle was now one of the most respected operations in the territory. Martha Wilson, who had eventually become one of Abigail's staunchest supporters, emerged from the house carrying a tray of lemonade. Now a frequent visitor and unofficial grandmother to the Irwin children, she had undergone a remarkable transformation from judgmental gossip to family friend. "That boy is the spitting image of his father," Martha remarked, setting down the tray. "Same determination, same fearlessness." "And the same capacity for love," Abigail added softly, watching as Henry patiently guided the pony around the yard, his strong hands ready to catch James if he should fall. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Abigail joined Henry on the porch swing that had become their favorite spot for end-of-day conversations. The Wyoming sunset painted the sky in spectacular shades of orange and purple, a sight that still took her breath away after all these years. "I had a letter from Boston today," she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "My old friend Caroline. She's considering coming west herself, now that she's widowed." "We'll welcome her if she does," Henry replied, his arm tightening around her. "Though I doubt Silver Creek will ever seem as formidable to her as it did to you that first day." Abigail smiled at the memory. "I was so certain I'd made a terrible mistake, that I'd be returning east as soon as possible. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else." She turned to face him. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't been reunited, if you hadn't recognized my name when I arrived?" Henry considered this. "I like to think we would have found each other anyway. Some connections are just meant to be." "The mail-order bride no one wanted," Abigail mused, "except for the one man who mattered." "You were never unwanted," Henry said firmly, echoing the words he'd spoken on their wedding day. "You were just making your way to where you belonged all along." As darkness fell over the Double Circle, and the first stars appeared in the vast Wyoming sky, Abigail knew that the journey that had once seemed like her greatest humiliation had in fact been her salvation. In this wild, beautiful country, beside this good man, she had found not just a home, but her true self, strong, capable, and deeply loved.